They mix up plaster, sometimes little pieces when they're missing, so they go around patching up these figurines. So after they make them, they just decide to look at them, and if they shows a little something missing, like a finger, a little piece, they just patch it up. That's also my aunt there. My uncle's factory has his own family working. So statues, figurines, all kinds of stuff, yes. And that's Raul right there, showing up.
Beginning, they wanted to just make a model.
Explaining a lot. I was also working with him, in case you're wondering where I learned.
I suggested to them to make molds.
After school, I used to go and do some.
So I figured it was a better way of making money.
You know, rubber mold and stuff like that. So
instead of selling one piece, it could sell 6 pieces.
The sound, right? No sound, but it's okay.
And he bought the idea. They will say something else. They said, "It's expensive, you know, compared to the other guy, to those other guys." He made better merchandise.
Set at the same time, and they used to ship it down to. I saw one day 18-wheeler truck, you know, and came over, and the guys loaded up really to the top, you know, with a bunch of.
The name.
I asked him,
the name CNS.
All this thing are going. He says they're going to go to Miami. So I said, wow, they're going to go to Miami. So wow, that's a lot, you know.
These beautiful sculptures were produced and sold for like $30 per square, no more than that. Completely painted and ready to go.
I was also a worker in Raul's factory.
Yeah, there you go.
In high school, and I used to go there and learn how to paint with the airbrushes and also the how to make plastic copies. Shorty was a worker there. Shorty was Raul used to have him there to do, early in the morning, he used to do these copies of all different kind of statues. Shorty used to go early in the morning, by 8 o'clock in the morning, and he used to pound these molds on the table and mix this plaster. And he used to do like 90 pieces a day, you know.
Latex rubber, it kind of stretches out, and this is all brushed on.
Look at how delicate this sculpture is going to be when you pull the top up.
Yeah.
Nothing, isn't that amazing? Wow.
The little head.
Wow, look at that.
To be able to do that.
I think I got involved with him, and I did this sculpture in the factory while Raul was around. When I finished high school, I kind of got involved with John, and then to be able to do this kind of work with Shorty, it opens a new door, because John showed me a way that to get involved with the community and involved with the neighborhood. See this piece here, Charlie, it was done by airbrush, see, gun, you know. I painted with the, see, there's not brushes on it. And the reason why I did it, because I liked the way he was, after he does all the copies of with the molds, he used to sit down and patch up some of these little hoses on the bubbles on the sculptures. There was a big fire that causes all that stuff that you see there burned down. It's a shame that it's gone, all of that stuff is gone, you know, the factory.
I might add that there are no such factories like this. You cannot find one that I know about in the Bronx. So it's a sad change of our economy.
Now they make them like styrofoam or something. There you go,
From
done,
some other
you know,
place.
not really heavy. Yes.
There's a second one. Juanito's next, I think.
This one is, yeah.
The next one is, we call it Juanito because it's a boy named Juanito in the neighborhood where we were casting every day. And we were casting all the works out on the sidewalk, usually during block parties. And Charlie had just done this movie, he was working on Wild Style. And Anthony, who was one of the guys that I cast, knew about it and wanted to impress Charlie with his skill at rapping. So he brought his friend, the human beatbox guy, and so when that goes on, you'll see what he does. So I like to say that the movie starts with hip hop and goes into the casting, but it ends up in very deep Catholic territory.
Yes.
And let's see what you think.
Come on, Kevin Green, let's rock this place.
Double back.
Hello, everybody in the place to be. My name is Anton Ross, the cool MC. I want to talk to you all about arts and crafts. You know, molds and bowls and things like that. Now it starts with a volunteer, a person from the crowd without any fear. Now, John is the man to get things done, because while he's doing your molds, you'll have some fun. The number of molds that are done are 2. There's one for him and one for you. He put them in places where people could see him. Walls, buildings, even museums. Oh, I'll Anton Rock is my name, you see, and I'm the all-around loving the cool MC. And Kevin Green, you master beatbox, rock the people right out their socks.
I want to point out that this cast belongs to Anthony, the one that's on the wall in that image.
Smile, let him do whatever he wants. Close your fingers a little bit. Let him do whatever he wants. It's a little on the chilly side. You can't stick out your chest as Watch the straw right there. Watch the straw.
On his eyes.
Buzzing a lot.
He's allowed.
Johnny, you ready to come out? You say yeah, he's ready. All right. You all right? Beautiful. Just this one, right? Loosen up. Let me get the straw. Get the straws out. Watch that. Okay.
The boy is gonna like it a lot because he wanted it to have a nice and simple, straight, you know. His mother don't know nothing about this stuff.
Shh, don't tell anybody about that. It's a secret. That's supposed to be a surprise for her?
Yeah,
But he's really into it. He's been telling me he's gonna give it to his mother and all this stuff, you know.
You know, for me, the carving the eye is okay, but generally the thing is the painting is when you tend to do more of the real expression. The eye carving part is mainly to laying a ground for where you're going to paint, you know.
Yes, in real life.
Okay, mira para ver. Is that?
Please don't continue to direct to people who are with you. Do you have the same today on the road, Mr. Gossett?
I don't know how we go from there to here, but here we are.
Yes, that's right.
I want to say that, first of all, thank you, Joanna and Charlie, for inviting me to participate in this activity. I've known these guys for over 40 years, and it's really, it's something to be, in their ether. The other thing I'd like to say is that, just to give you an idea about the territory where this happened, this is Fashion Moda, by the way, and that's me in my stealth self, with my partner, Stefan.
In the center of the photo.
In the
that's
center of the
good.
photo, yeah.
that's
So, the South Bronx at this moment in time looked like Dresden. It was, there were like little pockets of communities, but generally speaking, it was just barren, basically. And, my partner, Stefan, who is Austrian, I met him downtown, and we talked a lot about politics, history, commercialism, et cetera, and he knew he was in a bubble. And I knew that downtown was a bubble because, we both believed that no specific group had a stranglehold over development of aesthetic criteria. We also believed that you didn't have to be trained to be an artist, and at that time you didn't have to come to New York to be an artist either. And I had a residency up in the Bronx at a chemical company, and I said, hey, go up to the Bronx and check it out. And he did, and found this burnt out storefront basically, put on a roof, put on the front, borrowed electricity from the city, and Fashion Moda, of course, was born. I just want to say that Fashion Moda was a place where people mixed who would not normally mix under any circumstance. It wasn't an experiment. It was an interactive, creative process where different ideas and worlds collided to create new worlds. Most importantly, the guiding principle was that no specific group of people had a stranglehold over aesthetic criteria, their creation and implementation of it, which has been proven, and I think in the first video by, graffiti, rap, emceeing, and breakdancing, is ubiquitous. You can't go anywhere in the world without finding it. And this was created by teenagers, primarily of color. And today it is everywhere, Timbuktu, South Korea, wherever you want to go. The logo of Fashion Moda was in English, Russian, Chinese, and Spanish, the word fashion. And that kind of, set out our, global view of the world, that art can be made anywhere. And at this time, you got to remember, there were only a handful of galleries, a handful of museums. If you had a solo show before you were 50, you were considered a whiz kid. And it was Eurocentric and male, period.
Yes.
So it took another, 2 or 3 decades for this idea of globalism to seep into the contemporary art lexicon. By definition, we have no definition. This is really problematic for most people because people consistently ask us, what is Fashion Moda? And year after year, even the neighborhood kids would stick their head and say, what's this place going to be? Well, by definition, Fashion Moda had no definition. And we were not a gallery because we thought galleries represented colonialist ventures. We were not an alternative or artist space because we thought of them as post-colonial. And I look at today's decolonize this movement with nostalgia. But when pressed for a definition, my partner would say, Fashion Moda is magic. This is the territory where John and Rigoberto met.
Yes. You're talking about Stefan.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, my partner, yeah.
Stefan Hines. Yes.
Stefan Hines. Anyway, so let me ask you.
Send a photo there with him and the next standing together in the middle. Stefan, yes.
So John, let me ask you a question. How did you come about like wanting to cast people? What was the impetus for that? And then why did you come to Fashion Moda to do it?
I never know what I should say and what I shouldn't say. Ha ha ha. Okay. So I was staying in Patty Astor's apartment downtown, and she had a book on makeup for film and television. And I was trying to make movies, like monster movies or something, and I was trying to work on that. And there was a chapter on it, how to make face castings. And as soon as I did a few of them, I would have friends come over, and immediately I thought, this feels kind of like performance or something. It felt like that, and I was a very shy person, so I never did that. And then Charlie says, that's my twin brother, Charlie. He says, well, Stefan's up in the Bronx. Why don't you go up there and see how it goes? And so I took some materials. See, this image has a stage, and then there's a big picture window. And we did a casting on that stage in the first one, and I think it was the most jarring experience of my life, and I felt like I was home in a way that I had never felt before. And it doesn't make any sense, but I did. I felt, and so immediately I got more materials, and I kept coming back every day, and we had this idea that we would have, it was called the South Bronx Hall of Fame, which was meant as a joke on the idea of all the sports Hall of Fames and things like that. And each person would get cast and painted and put up. And the concept is that we only work with people that would ask us to make a cast for them. And so we would make one cast for the person, and one cast we would put up on this wall. And so we were making a whole collection here. And yes. Yes.
How did you meet John Rigoberto?
Well, no, John missed the part of he did my cousin David with his mouth open, I think, before I met him. So after that, Wally, my cousin, a taxi driver, he kind of, and David were together. So Wally came over and told me that John was doing something in Fashion Moda, and I think you're good with your hands, so maybe you could meet him. And he introduced me to John, and John, you was doing it like, 3 months ahead of this whole thing, and then I met...
Not too much.
Not too much. So I got involved with John, and that's what the picture you see there. So I started working with him.
When he showed up, the first thing we did, we
did
went
a
out
cast.
to the street first, because I always took a Polaroid of someone first. And I had an amazing moment, which I didn't have with anybody before that, which was I took a picture, I still have the Polaroid of Rigoberto, and I thought to myself, this is the one right here. And you might say, why would you think of this is the one? And I said, well, you have to understand, I'm an identical twin, so I always feel like I'm part of a half of something. And I saw Rigoberto, and I knew what I saw and what he emitted in terms of his character. And I said, this is the person that I need right now.
This is really kind of an interesting moment because you realize that John and Rigoberto are from two separate worlds. And they're thrown into this third world, which is Fashion Moda. That's another,
Yes.
What did you think about Fashion Moda?
For me, it was amazing. It was great to be wanted in a sense that I was always creating somebody in Fashion Moda. John used to call me and said, rather than coming down from 10th Street, I'm going to be in Fashion Moda. And okay, we meet in Fashion Moda, and he brings another one, make another one, go home. After a while, I said to him, I would love to do this in my own neighborhood. So what I did was I took some supply and I went to my Walton Avenue neighborhood, and I did a friend of mine named Felix Rosado.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of opened the door. John said that I invented Walton Avenue, but I think that's Walton Avenue. So.
That's a big invention. You'll see later what Walton Avenue is. And I think Rigoberto did invent Walton Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Walton Avenue right here.
Yeah.
And then we're only, let's say, 3 or 4 years later.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that, not so fast, let's go back to that one.
To the Walton
The Walton Avenue image, I like that. Okay.
Look at that, yeah.
And you see the one on the farthest end is a portrait of me by Rigoberto. See the one with the white shirt?
Yes.
That weird-looking guy.
And
then there's one kind of in the middle with a cap and a hood. You see the boy in the middle standing up by with his bike? There's next to him is an image of Rigoberto that I did of him. And anyways, most of these casts were borrowed from neighborhood collections in people's apartments. And Robert used to always get upset. He'd say, "Why do you have to put up so many of them all the time?" I said, "We have to have all of them up that we can do, right?"
I think that was a good point, because when you did those casts, you did two.
Yes.
Yeah.
One was for the sitter,
Yes.
and one was for you guys.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that brings up a pretty, I don't know how to ask this, but how did you build relationships with your sitters? I mean, this is a very intimate process.
Very intimate.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
dangerous.
and dangerous, and you deal with people's kids. you do-
Impossible.
Right? I
Yes.
mean, and so how did you two navigate that?
Well, to be cast out in the open, it's kind of take away a lot of negative stuff that goes around. So, but
Out in the open.
out in the open,
Right.
and people appreciate that there's no funny business going on. You know? And also they also
Always
volunteer themselves.
publicly, lots of people around. The more people, the better.
Yeah, and sometimes
Yes.
the parents are there to help, to volunteer, to support, you know, that kind of stuff. So the idea is that when we finish one piece, we paint it and we give them as a gift one, you know. So we also go to the person's house and put it up. you know.
Yeah, this is Louis Garcia's
Louis
house.
Garcia, yeah.
But I want to say that one of my artistic disciplines, I like to say, is that I never liked to choose somebody. I like them to come to me and ask me for some kind of attention. It's a much better relationship to have. You asked, how do you make the relationship? If the person is coming to you, asking you to do something for them, it makes it a lot easier. And I certainly would never show interest. I don't point at especially a child. I would never say, I like the way this one looks. Never. I stay away from all this. So when some kid comes in to the casting, right, and says, hey, what about me? I want to do it. I go, no, I don't think you're ready. I think you should go away, come back tomorrow, and maybe we'll talk about it, you know. Always keep people, that pushing away is a very nice relationship to have with people.
A follow-up to that
Yes.
is you, and through Rigoberto's entree, stepped into a completely different community to work in. One that was like, you know, pretty much diametrically opposed to having people from the outside come
Right.
in.
Yes.
How did you feel, how did you trust John to do that? I mean, you must have had some
I
feeling.
wouldn't do it.
You know.
No way.
Well,
Yeah.
and in my neighborhood, when I did this first one, the cast of Felix, John was living in 10th Street, so I decided to, and John was talking to me, and I said, John, why you don't move over to my neighborhood? We could do it out in the open, you know, in the street there. So he moved over, we rented a studio. Eventually, people were seeing the stuff that we were doing in the street, and there's a kid behind, the other kid behind it. That kid keeps coming closer and closer and closer. Eventually, they will ask the questions about, you know, I want to do this too, or we don't need to ask them no more. So they keep watching and they keep learning,
It's a repetition.
Yeah,
It has a lot to
yeah.
do with ease with people.
Yeah.
And put people, slow it down, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do somebody who's gonna spread the word in a sense, they're gonna do the work for you. Oh, this is like this, you know. So that makes it easier for you to be able to catch somebody else, and they will bring the family, so and they will be supported, you know. So it takes a lot of neighborhood community back and forth things, you know, and that's when you get involved with the neighborhood.
And that, I'm sure, helped you kind of do these major
Yes, major
pieces.
project, yes.
Back to school, double Dutch.
Okay, we're jumping into a new sphere now,
Right.
okay? And it's a good time that we are, and
Yes.
and as you know,
Thank you. Thank you.
yes, and Fashion Moda was involved with the very first application that we made to make a permanent public work. I was always upset about the way we're making a piece for the family, and then we make the piece for ourselves, which may be going to possibly a collection or something. But I didn't like that, because I said that there's not a common use of this artwork. I didn't like the fact that it was too private for me. I wanted public. And so what happened is we did get how much of the story you want to tell about this?
Well, we only have, an hour or so. So.
Well, at least you should say the person who took the photo
Right,
is
right.
Marty Cooper. You know.
Martha Cooper is the master, and she can take something. And can I point out that the other masters in this photo are the 4 double Dutch jumping girls. And what I want to point out is I've seen at the Bronx Museum, they have a special double Dutch day, and they had all these experts doing it, and none of them could do it the way these 4 girls were. These 4 girls were so easy that when we made the double Dutch statue that was on the wall that you see here, Marty Cooper, who's a spectacular photographer, she just walked down to the scene, and there are the exact same 4 girls that were there that happened to live in the same building where it was up. And of course, she's very charming, and before long, they're demonstrating to her how you do the double Dutch. And I want to say sincerely that her photograph is so fine as a ritual of children at play that I could never look at. It took me decades to be able to look at the double Dutch that we made, because her version of, you see the way that the foreheads are touching, and then on the outside the foreheads are also leaned in. It's a very cosmic kind of ritualistic looking image that she did. Beautiful, beautiful. And these kids, they could do this jumping rope with forever, never make a mistake or anything.
Yeah. So this is a good time to talk about the Broad. And
Why not?
How did Eli came up to the Bronx and met
Yes.
you, and what did you talk about? I mean,
Well,
let me just say this, and I think Joanne talked about this. He was like really fascinated with this work.
First, he came in a limousine, park outside, that kind of stuff, And then we jumped his, I live in the 6th floor. Well, we're gonna go up the stairs.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's.
Back up for a second. Let's go back a little bit. Okay, that's the one that's right now at the Boston Museum. Okay, I apologize, but this is the loan from the Broad to the Boston Museum, and it's quite beautiful, I have to say. So can we go on? I'm looking for the other one that's on roof material. Do you know that one? We got someone back here that's doing all the work.
Yeah.
I think it's Charlie James, actually. Now, look at this. Joanne, tell me you don't remember this being installed, right? And so to do this installation, it's the same one that was just shown at the Boston Museum, but I had this idea that I wanted to appear as if it's on a facade of a building outdoors. And so it was something silly. I just, we got our hands on a bunch of this rough roofing material and cut it to make it look as if it's slabs of stone or something, and then that's it.
So Eli comes up to the Bronx, and what happens? I mean, what did you
He
guys
got
talk
excited.
about?
He
You
got
got
really excited.
yeah.
He liked what we were seeing, the things.
Eli doesn't want to talk about things.
No.
He knows what he wants, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
But here's the thing. He was turned on by this double Dutch piece. He knew it was something that must have, right? But then he found out that it's in the Bronx, and he went and saw it there.
There we go.
But that's where it happened, is when he saw the work on view permanently in a neighborhood, he was aflame with passion about this project. And he saw it as one of his missions in life was to keep this thing going. He didn't want it to stop.
Yeah.
So when we were this is where he came and visited us and came up to the
Right.
6th floor. But he saw this piece. This is also another masterpiece by Marty Cooper. And look at how the colors of the yellows and everything down below are echoed in the piece. This is called Back to School, and it happens to be at the Walton Avenue block, right where Rigoberto and I were living at the time that we did this.
On Walton Avenue, 171.
Yeah, this is Walton Avenue, and
If you're wondering how they got up there, I climbed up there with a scaffold and painted it on.
well, you don't think I went up there, do you?
No,
That's a joke, by the way. I'm joking. I was with him on this scaffolding. Come on.
he was downstairs going, this way, that way.
So
This is the Broad right
this
here.
is the, yeah.
This is upstairs, and we're thrilled that they're showing these pieces, and that includes Thomas, and
Always at midnight, Tommy is running all around the yes, you know.
So with this piece, I'd like to hold on for this slide for a second. I don't see how people could think that these pieces were controversial, right? I mean, if you look at your entire oeuvre over the years, but there have been controversial pieces.
terrible.
And
I always thought that I attract always some kinds of sparks of controversy,
Yeah.
but it's not my intention, and I try to avoid it as much as
so you want to talk about this piece then, about, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think a simple one.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
police precinct wanted the parking area to park the car, just kidding.
So the piece
We took the parking area.
we took
the
Here's the thing. They came, and this time, they asked me, this guy here, without asking him, and I learned my lesson, which is you do that, you're going to catch hell, And what I mean is, karmically, you're going to catch hell. That's what I mean. And what happened is, we showed a proposal to the architect of the new 44th precinct, and the architect said, "You're not putting that sculpture on the wall here. We don't want that. Our wall is designed for itself." But there happened to be a traffic triangle right outside. Now, I want to point out something important. First of all, Eli Broad acquired this piece immediately after it was finished. And he got it from Brooke Alexander, and this was many years before this controversy that happened at the 44th precinct. So I'm just saying that Eli Broad saw it in a very different way,
Can I interrupt here?
Yes.
They also cast the dog.
Can we have the dog being cast, please?
They cast the dog.
All right.
So, continue.
Why would we cast the dog? That's impossible. This is a fighting pit bull dog, right? That's owned by Raymond Garcia,
Yeah.
who's the most lovable, kind, warm, but he was obsessed with dogs. He loved this dog so much. And so we always had on and off things, but we were on an on period then because we were going to cast this image of Raymond and his dog. And so our idea, because we're not very smart, was to have a veterinarian come in and put the dog to sleep, and then we were going to cast the dog, right? Because no pit bull is going to let you cast him. And you know what? God shone his light on us and blessed us and said, "You won't have any vet." The vet said, "No, we don't want it. I can't make it this day." And of course, we're impatient, so we're like, "We don't care. We're going to cast the dog anyways." So Raymond had the dog pose exactly in the pose that we had, and we just cast it straight up, just the way he would. So he stood, and we had a little seam in the front and the back so that it would come off, and the dog very nicely. Well, so I'm just saying that if we had the vet, that would have been a worthless.
He was.
It would have been a nothing.
While we were casting the dog was leaning to the to different sides. He goes. Like he didn't like it. If I get you guys.
Can I point out there's Rigoberto is in the back with the goatee and the mustache and the shirt like that, and the rest are neighborhood kids that are helping us do this.
Okay, let's go back to the police station. I just wanted to make that point about casting the dog.
I just want to say about the police.
Yeah.
The neighborhood people, we had meetings and everything, everybody approved the whole thing, you know.
Yes,
at the
very,
end, so
thank you,
that's-
Robert.
Yeah.
We went around to all the neighborhood, you know, they have, what do you call it? Where you have a board.
Mhm, Community board.
Community, thank you, a community board, and we went and they were like, oh my God, it's you guys, this is so wonderful to see you.
Yeah.
And the community board is, whatever you want to do, let's do it, that's great.
Yes.
But they didn't know how it turned out, so.
Yeah.
So everybody was like, go ahead, go ahead. But then, maybe it was my fault, I don't know.
I think it was the police precinct was involved. That's, you know, they didn't want it.
They didn't want it.
They wanted that area to park.
No, I think it's that we were representing youth that was more on the outside. And they were not, these weren't college-born, and people were, we had some professional black people in the, the architecture part of City College, I mean, of New York City, that were enraged at this work because they said, this does not represent us. We do not approve of ourselves. You did not get our approval to make us look like this person. And we are not drug dealers and addicts and all the other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So they gave us 3 days to take it off.
I agree. Take it down.
Take it down, yeah.
Moving on.
Yes. Yes.
Rigoberto, you had a significant physical setback.
Yes.
And let's see, split self. And I think, would you talk about that?
Yes, the reason why I did this piece is I had an asthma attack. I ended in the ICU in the hospital. I had a headache, seizures, lost my vision. Yeah, and I was talking to a friend of mine about, you know, what was going on. And somehow I heard the door knock, and I went to answer the door. My grandmother and my mother were there, and kind of, you know, she says, come to the hallway, let's have a walk, you know. I want to talk to you about one thing, and I went. At the same time, this lady stopped me. She says, where you going? I said, well, I'm walking with my grandmother and mother. And she left me alone, and at the end, I kept on walking. But she didn't see my grandmother and mother. I said, don't you see them in the door, metal door reflection there? Don't you see them there? And she said, no. So she kept on walking, and then my grandmother opened the door. She says, before I leave, run back. And I did, and she said, from this moment on, you're gonna remember everything. So I did. I run back, I slide towards the door. When I lift my head up, I realized that I was in a hospital. And I look around, and the person that I was talking to was my doctor. He asked me why I like this story. He says, because that moment I started remembering things, except those people I owe money to. So that was it.
The people in the hospital at first thought Rigoberto was a lowlife. They didn't know who they had on their hands. And they claimed that he was lying about being blind.
Yeah.
And they said, you say you're blind. Your eyes are perfect. And then another doctor came and checked the retinas or whatever they are in the back of his head, and they found out that the problem with his vision wasn't the eyes, it was the connection back here in his brain that wasn't allowing the vision to
The
come
vein
through.
busted.
The vein, yeah, so somehow
And
it was
the
that's
view,
why
I
he
could
was
not
blind.
see nothing. So the thing about these doctors, Dr. Snyder, he says, how many fingers do you see? And the problem with my vision was, it was not my head, it was my eyes. It was doing this. It was moving back and forth. But before that, I was 100% blind. And then I started seeing from distance, and somehow I had another headache, and I was receiving headaches every day. Everything was developing itself because of my psychiatrist Snyder. He says, just keep no operation, let's not unclog, just leave it the way it is. It's gonna, you're young, it's gonna fix itself.
And you had to kind of relearn.
Yeah, I had
everything,
John and me, we were doing some kind of a project. I gave John a lot of hassle because he was complaining to my wife. Hey, he's getting mad. I said, well, because I wanted to do things by myself, but John was trying to get involved all the time. But yes, I had to relearn how to do the art all over again and paint all over again and remembering things like families, et cetera, down the line. So yes, it took me 7 years taking medication for seizures, but throughout the years I was doing this, until one day the stairs, everything stopped, and I started going places, you know. So.
I just want to say that, you know, the impulse of this group to work at the community level is something that is very unusual in the art world. And when you think about the idea of, you know, kind of artists going into communities with ideas versus artists going into communities, those are two very different things, right? So that's something that I've always thought of when I think about these two guys.
Yeah, I did my doctor with me. He was examining me, and I was breathing. So he's in Charlie's area. But the reason why I did that is we became friends, my asthma doctor and me, and so I decided to get him involved, you know, with this kind of work. So he was helping me mental-wise, you know, that kind of stuff.
Can we go back to that last photograph, please?
Which one?
Sorry to
Which one?
cut in on you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not this one, the one before this one. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Okay, we're casting Pedro, and it's
Pedro.
outside, Pedro, and who is part of the Bronx collection. I mean, excuse me, the Broad collection. There he is. But let's go back to the photograph because my dear friend Thomas is sucking his thumb at the very bottom of it. You see he's in a yellow shirt, and he's going like this in the bottom corner. That's Thomas. And a year later, he was ready to try the casting that we made of him running.
That time it was the
Yes,
youngest one.
so I'm just saying that
He was 5 years old.
it really helps if you have children that are watching it as they're coming through because they get very natural with the process, you know.
So with that in mind, how has your view and ideas about community changed over the years, or has it changed in relationship to doing your work?
At the moment, stretching it out with some other sculpture that I'm doing. I'm doing pilots from the World War II, you know, airmen.
Tuskegee
Yes,
Airmen.
and somehow I did this Raymond who's 102, and I'm supposed to do another one of 104. So I'm hoping that everything will come out okay. I did Mr. Hall, he was 97 years. So just working on, see, what I'm trying to do is, lately I've been just, instead of me being in one area, I'm doing that doctor's call. I'm going to places and introducing myself and do the work, you know, so.
You moved down to Orlando, and
I
that's
live
kind of
in
what you're doing,
Kissimmee
right?
area,
Yeah.
yes, that's what I'm doing over there. Beside coming here and shows and, you know.
So in other words, he's like taking the show on the road and making things happen, not waiting for stuff to come to you,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's, I bring it towards me, you know, take it home, like homework, like John did in the beginning, 10th Street, he used to do it in Fashion Moda, take it home, do it, and now I'm doing the same thing, taking it home, you know, so it goes around. Wow, look at this piece.
So good, this is great segue.
John.
What is your most favorite collaboration? They've done this stuff like all over the world, but this is in Brazil, right?
Well, not including all the Bronx work,
Right.
because I'm not going to compare this to that.
Right.
That's a special place all by itself.
Yeah.
But in terms of commissioned works that we've done in many different places, this one right here is definitely very important to us. And you're seeing there's, it's two walls that actually come together the way my hands are like this, and they come together at a right angle. And you know, like always, I was always struggling with this was a work for Bernardo Paz, who had founded this art place in Brazil called Inhotim. And when we first met him on the place, he was crying, and he was saying how the Congado Mozambique, which is this Afro-Catholic religious organization that has existed for many centuries going back to Africa, he wanted us to work with them. And this is the wall that we did related to that work. Originally, they had said to us, we want you, we're offering you, we were the initial residents in this place. They hadn't had anyone before, and they said, why don't you work in our visitor center? And I was strictly against it, and I said, I don't like that, because we need to get out of this place. We need to go out to the nearest town and introduce ourselves there, and then people, we're meeting them rather than having us come and go there. And so let's hold this piece, because this is the result of going to Brumagino. We went there, and there was no plaza or anything there. All they had was a rodoviaria, which is a bus turnaround. And that's what we're depicting here, which is there's a turnaround bus, and they had weekly for-ho dances in the center of the turnaround. That's what's going on there. And the train tracks represent Bernardo Paz's workforce going to get iron ore.
Yeah,
That he has many mines in all, as far as you can see. And that's why the other one is gold. I mean, it's ochre color. And you see all those people on the bus, we cast in Brumagino. We had this little tiny closet-like space where all our stuff was. We'd arrive and pull it all out and just put it on the sidewalk, and we'd do the work. And so at the end, we said, what are we going to do with all these casts? And we had this idea, well, maybe we should put them on the bus like they're traveling, because this is very typical transportation in Brazil, you know? So next, is there another one?
Rigoberto, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, the size of the bus is 9 feet high, 29 feet long, and no windows. People get wet inside. So, how we cast the
bus?
The bus.
That was
by
the
section.
easy part.
That was the easy part. Yes, yes, yeah. I think our friend Fuba, who got to do all the casting for us, we have it in pieces, and somehow we had it upside
First, we had to
down.
find the bus,
Find the
just
bus,
the right
yeah,
bus.
the right bus, and then he did section by section, and then we had to put it together with a rod to hang the bus. And
So over 40 years, the two of you have been working together, but you both have separate practices as well.
yes.
So how is your work different than John's?
When it comes to painting, I think I like more tone into it, more color. When it comes to physical stuff, I like the idea of the harder it is, the better for me, you know. Yes.
Because, I mean, there is a difference between the two works. I mean,
Definitely.
and there's the collaboration, and then the two works, so there's really...
Rigoberto is fresher than I am.
Well, I'm fresher because I came back and I don't feel like it. I was born again.
Yeah.
That's what one of my, a person was doing an interview of me, and she said, don't you feel tired of doing the same thing? I said, wait a minute, I just learned this all over again, you know, so it's
Go
fresh.
back to the other slide. Wait something.
Oh, not these guys.
No. Okay, these two pieces are presently on view at Charlie James Gallery in Chinatown. And the one in particular I want to talk about is called Shalene's Radical Education, okay? And I love this piece because it shows how you and I were able to collaborate
Yes.
on a piece together. And I've been tracking Shalene for some time. She's a supernova in the young art world, cutting edge. She just knows everything. She's the smartest, wisest, the most streetwise, and she's just an amazing human being. And what you see with her hair, I think is very interesting, is she shaved all her hair except for the very top. So everything you see, that's how much hair she has. It's all coming off the very top of her head, right? And but so I was bothering her, and I never ever show interest.
She
in
wanted
working.
it to be cast, but not
No.
done by himself with
No,
me involved.
exactly.
You know,
She
so
said
that's- yeah.
she wanted her
Both of us.
uncle Rigoberto
Yes.
involved, you know? And so we agreed to wait till he was in town.
She mentioned a story about meeting us in Brooke Alexander Gallery, and we took a photo. She was young, you know, so show it to me. She said, oh, wow, look, you know. But yes, she's got a long history about liking our work.
So what's that machete about?
Oh, machete. Go ahead, John. Yes.
Well, she had a rolling pin, and I thought that was really impressive over her shoulder. And then she said, no, I'm feeling like I want to hold a machete. And
Yeah.
I like it as a kind of image of the goddess of justice. Will be holding a sword or something like that. And so and she was coming the next morning, and I said to our studio assistant, Kevin, I said, Kevin, how the hell are we going to get a machete? We don't have a machete here. And I just called her, and she said she wanted us to use hers, but she changed her mind. She thinks she wants to keep it. And Kevin goes, wait a second, the hardware down the block, they sell machetes.
Yes.
So we went down to the hardware store, and I found they had 3. And I got one for each of us, meaning one for Rigoberto, one for me, and one for Shalene. And so we made the piece with cutting off the hand, right? And then she posed with her hand on a separate casting on each machete. Are you following this so far? Yeah. So then when you have all 3 hands, then one at a time, you put one on each cast. So that's how that was made.
So I think I looked at my phone because of the time. I wasn't getting the message, so I'm going to make that straight. This is a great place for us to stop. I mean, I'd love to kind of talk for the next few hours, but you have to go down and see this workshop that they've done, this residency at Charlie James, when it opens on the 28th. It has some fantastic pieces in it. And I just want to really say that I'm so glad that we've been friends over these years. It's been
pretty good,
It's
right?
been pretty good. So let's go to questions, the Q&A.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, okay. If I can't see anything, so
Yeah.
we'll just stand up and somebody's,
Have you guys talked to Kehinde Wiley? Because he goes out into the street to find his models, just like you go.
Who?
Kendi Wiley.
Oh, I know who Kehinde Wiley is.
Yeah. The question was, have you talked with Kehinde Wiley about this? Because he goes out in the street to find
Well,
them.
he certainly doesn't need to talk to us. I think he knows a lot. Thank you very much for that question, though.
Yes, did you have your hand?
This is for John. I'm wondering if you're familiar with the Skull Sisters. They're also twins. And your piece with the bus reminded me so much of their work, their scenery.
Well,
The three-dimensional work.
you know that there's a great many fabulous artists who are identical twins. I know many of them, and they're much better than Charlie and I are. But they're, so it runs. There is something, some people have a mythology about twins having, you know, lacking things but having more of something else, you know. But I don't know the sisters that you're referring to. Yes.
I saw a hand in the back, yes.
Oh, come on, I don't want to reveal that part. All right, just for you, I'll tell you, okay? The vet came the next day, and we put the dog in a, well, kind of a sleepy position, and we cast the head, which was completely useless to me as sculpture, right? It was just a mess of a head on the thing. So then I had to rework it in a fake kind of way to make it look like his head. That's the best I can tell you. It did not look like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you all so much for being here and sharing your stories. There are two things. One is a question and one is a statement. I was wondering if you thought that part of the way, one of the reasons why the Bronx community, particularly Walton Avenue, which I'm familiar with as a New Yorker, embraced you in the 80s, because in the 70s, as you know, there were all of these fires that were set in the Bronx when 250,000 people were displaced, and the community was really destroyed. And so I think that what you were doing in bringing value to the community in what you did in the work really must have resonated for a lot of people.
No doubt. No, I agree with what, yes,
Out of the decade
yes.
of just very greedy landowners, you know, landlords wanting to get their insurance money and to try to gentrify, or the, you know, the beginnings of gentrifying, trying to gentrify. So I just wanted you to speak to that, because I think it's a very important historic
Go ahead, Robert.
piece to your work in terms of how people respond.
I was born in Puerto Rico, but I went directly to the Bronx, 135 Willis Avenue, and I got burned twice at the apartment, yes. That's the true story.
Yeah.
Live in hotels. And all that, yes.
And the other, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say that this started in '79.
Yeah.
So this was really at the height of
Yes.
That was as bad as it got.
as bad as it got. And the other things that kind of surround that is that more than 20% of all babies that were born in Lincoln Hospital had to be in intensive care.
Yes.
So, I mean, the idea of what community was and how it responded, and to Fashion Moda in particular, you know, a lot of people initially was like, they were very kind of backed off from us because they had been used and abused so many times in the past with government programs and, you know, people making promises. We didn't make any promises. We just were there, and we were trying to.
That's Mr. Lewis right there. Okay.
You know, so yeah, I mean, that was a really difficult time, but on the other hand, there were very strong pockets of community there in the Bronx, very strong.
Yeah, I just thought it was important to bring that up, because the relationship and the community to the work and the time frame is really important to that history.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask, if you could clarify more about the distinct differences in your backgrounds, because you alluded to it, but to clarify, you know, how distinct those differences in terms of the way you were raised, things you were exposed to, because those differences are also important to how this brotherhood and collaboration flourish.
See, I wasn't gonna talk about that because John is like very kind of upset when I mentioned the word Binghamton, New York, which is where he's from, you know. No, I'm not throwing shade on him. He just didn't want to go there, you know. But yeah, I mean, Rigoberto just got out of high school when this happened, and John had you can talk about, but he was educated, college educated, Cornell, I think it was, right? So, I mean, this is like and when John talks about this photograph that he makes outside of Fashion Moda with Rigoberto, I mean, I think it's a very important moment because it was just, something happened there.
Right,
Between
definitely.
the two of these guys, you know, so.
Love of first sight.
Yes.
There you go.
That's the idea.
Which doesn't really answer your question, but I like that.
Let me ask it this way. How did community in your growing up experience in Binghamton and your community being in Puerto Rico and in the Bronx, how were they different? How were your communities different? How were they similar? Because the differences and the similarities enable for new discourse and communication as collaborators.
But I want to say also, yes, it's his community and it's my community, but it's also Rigoberto and John, and we're like individuals, and we might be weird within our community. We don't necessarily represent it, you know?
No, when John moved to my neighborhood, I introduced him to my friends, and he also met new friends. So yes, he made it new. People move in, people move out, and so yes, you get to know other folks. You know.
Yeah. Yes.
Question for all three. What's the secret behind maintaining those working relationship and friendship for all these decades?
Good question.
You have to need each other, right?
Yeah.
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 You meet each other and you
Yes.
work with each other and you see something that you could see. We always compete with each other. He did Thomas 5 years old. I did my daughter, who was 2.5 years old. Damn. So I keep, and you, instead of being negative, or, you keep, how can you top it? That's the idea. Yes.
And he did. He did.
He did.
I also think if you show that first picture from Fashion Moda is very telling.
Yes.
That one.
This one. So you can't see John in this picture, but you can see Rigoberto.
Look at those arms, it's strong.
John is very happy not to be seen, believe me.
So there's this really a real sense of humility in the relationship, you know, and it's something that I think we miss today in this world. I said about this, what do they call it, social practice. You know, this was like social practice at the best possible time and way. We were bringing people together. We weren't saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You should have this. You know, I mean, and that's where I believe it's kind of gone. Kind of the academicization of social practice has made it something that is not a tool. You know, it's made it something else. I think it's about the creative process. And you know, Fashion Moda was like, you didn't have to be trained, you didn't have to have a stellar vocabulary to be involved in the creative process. And in those days, no one recognized that.
Yeah.
Now, a couple biennales ago, you had outsider artists mixed in with the folks at the Arsenale, right? Well, we did that in 1978, 1979.
Did I point out that Rigoberto's uncle had work often at Fashion Moda?
Yeah.
Works from his factory were on view.
Yeah.
Stefan loved them.
So we had no boundaries from that, right? Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Also, the Yorker, I lived in the Bronx at the same time.
Wow.
Actually, the question has to do with who are you teaching your skill sets to for following her?
Beside me, beside John, I think we open doors in many different directions. Like when we're casting somebody for the first time, they get to understand the process, so they get to get involved with it. You know.
Your question is a little bit like we don't want to make someone learn to make art that's what we do. I mean, it's fine if they want to do it, but that's not our, in a way, that has to be, someone has to seek that out. Of course, we have a lot of interaction with young people, and, you know, at
Yeah.
East 100th Street,
Yeah.
there was piles of kids in all the time.
I tried.
But it's not the same as where you anoint someone that becomes you or something like that. It's not like that. Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
I'm involved with a group in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Yes.
It's replication of the Manchester Biennial.
Yeah.
Teaching young people ceramics and art and other things like that. I'm just wondering if there is some kind of association to what you guys are doing that you can bring two groups like ours. It's called Handicap National.
Okay.
Center for Arts and Technology.
I've been working with a group in Puerto Rico who moved from Puerto Rico to Florida, and I've been casting this artists, a bunch of artists, and trying to cast them, and they like the idea of getting involved with the supply and all that stuff, but sometimes they find it complicated, hard to do, but yes, they want to do something, they will do it, but it takes money to.
Well, you're both in Florida, so, maybe you can hook
Yeah,
up
and
later.
I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah.
I was just curious, I couldn't help but see the similarity between the figures at Pompeii and people sort of stopped in action. And I saw that with the children jump roping, people in Pompeii because of the volcano.
Yes.
Stopped and
Yeah.
literally running down the street. Just particularly the early ones, which are rougher, seem really that way. I mean,
Yes.
the history of them is, they're just beautiful pieces.
Thank you.
In there, no doubt.
Yeah.
First of all, I love the work. In fact, John was cast me right off.
Scott.
Is that Scott?
Scott B.
My God!
Great Scott!
Yeah.
I'm curious, with the later work now, public work that you're putting up on buildings,
Yeah.
are you still using the same materials? Is it still all
Fiberglass.
Anything outdoors must be fiberglass at least. It can't be plaster. or anything like
Weatherproof.
that. And it has to be
Epoxy
like an
paint.
epoxy paint, like for boats and things like that. Is that what you meant? Yeah.
Yes.
One of the most powerful moments I think that we saw in there was when the mother was presented with the piece of her son and her response.
That was the Catholic part.
Well, what I got from that was the power of your ability to transform someone's life and their heart, and by making them feel seen, and I'm wondering what.
You have to always keep in mind it's reciprocal. I'm getting, whatever is going this way, I'm getting back, as you saw, I'm getting back so much more than what I'm.
The people,
Yes.
do you have a couple stories of people that you cast that went on to do, like, something that they may not have thought of, or that
Yes,
you had
all
a
the
moment
time.
that you saw Rigoberto and you
Yes.
sparked and
Yes.
something happened.
Yes.
Did anyone have that experience that took them in a different path in life?
I'm not sure what story that I'm about to tell, but I just want to tell you, there are many people that are grown up now that I knew as children that are very interesting, very active people, and that are important to me. So that's the best I can.
I'd like to address that because, John and Rigoberto, but also Fashion Moda, changed the trajectory of many people and families' lives. And if you look at just the graffiti folks, Crash, who did the front of Fashion Moda, which we have a picture here of, I have a video clip of him showing Prince Albert II in Monaco how to tag with a spray can. And Prince Albert II makes a heart. I mention this because, and you went to junior high school together with Crash, so I mention this because Crash at 19 curates graffiti success for America at Fashion Moda. And this had, all Lady Pink, Lee's.
Best, yeah.
Best.
All the best, all the OGs now. And that group of people have all, as kind of, as well known as they've gotten through the graffiti world, rap, etc. I mean, they've done, you know, Louis Vuitton, La Scala, Ferrari. I mean, you know, this is stuff that at that time we had no idea was going to happen. But those people have all remained connected to their neighborhoods. Crash has a gallery, you know, he does stuff all over up in the Bronx, all over the world, actually.
Lady Pink,
Lady
very
Pink,
active.
very
Yes.
active. I mean,
Yeah.
so, and that impetus has changed the trajectory of many, many lives that will continue to, you know, go out like dropping a stone in a pond. So yes, I mean, this is something this is a byproduct that we never even imagined when we started doing this, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, mine is not a question as much as an observation. I know John and Rigoberto from New York City. John's my neighbor.
Rosemary.
And so, I don't know if you guys got that these guys brought a sense of community into a community that didn't exist, so to speak. So John had a studio in the ground floor of the building on 152 East 100th Street, and immediately created this like imagine if the New York City public school system had an after-school fucking, pardon my French, program for kids, and there was a bunch of displaced families down the block, homeless families that the city would put up in these tenements temporarily. And what was always interesting to myself and my wife was that 2 blocks west was Central Park, the biggest amazing park in New York City that you could run around, roam. And the point is, none of these kids, none of these parents would take their kids there. They would just sit in the stoop all day, nothing. But yet, John and Rigoberto's studio provided this escape.
A hangout place.
A hangout place.
Yeah.
This is, in a sense, like kind of what Fashion Moda was.
Yes.
This is like the third iteration of these guys' work. And, you know, it was just fascinating to see what was going on there. And it could be weird also, right? Because you see a bunch of kids, like you said, no funny business going on, and that's why you did it in public.
Yeah.
I mean, John would be like, okay, guys, it's juice time.
Juice.
And if somebody walked into this place at the wrong time,
Yeah.
he'd be like, juice time? Like, no, what are you talking about juice time? And all the kids would go crazy. They'd all get some orange juice. Music would go on. Some of them would start rapping.
Yeah,
And you know, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was just like, you can never replicate what was going on there.
Yeah.
And you know, I just happen to be very fortunate, grateful. I mean, what these guys were doing, they were doing right downstairs from, you know, the apartment building, you know, when in my 30s.
Right.
So it was just
I have a funny story about that in Fashion Moda. Jane Dixon, who is his brother's partner, did a piece called City Maze in Fashion Moda. She built a maze. And this is the connection between Crash and she asked Crash, can you come in and paint this? There's a cardboard maze in there. So the day that show closed, I was sitting there with Robert Colescott, who I was trying to get to have a show here at Fashion Moda. And we're sitting there, and the kids are banging on the windows. School is let out, and they're like, you know, like 50 kids, they're banging on the window, and Robert Colescott's sitting there like this, and then we open the door, and they come and they trash that maze, you know. And Robert Colescott was like, you want me to have a show here? No. We never had a show, Robert Colescott at Fashion Moda. We did show him at the new museum, but I'm just saying that, you know, so that when worlds collide, you know, that was just, it's true, you know, what happened because of Rigoberto and John, how they created community. It was a creation as well, you know. I mean, there are, you know, communities, there are select communities, there are created communities, And my definition of community is who's ever in the room that night, that's the community, right? So,
You remember the bus that came to 100th Street, and we all took them to, Baltimore and see the Medicare place.
Yeah.
The whole neighborhood loaded up, you know.
That's actually another, if I may, another
Yes, go ahead.
interesting thing, because I thought about that.
Yeah.
So there was always a bunch of young kids, but occasionally there'd be an older person.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in this particular
Melissa.
scenario and
Yeah.
piece of work
Yes.
that John and Rigoberto were working on, there was this older black man who was missing a foot. I forget his
Yes.
name.
Henry.
He was the
Henry Mans. Henry Mans.
Henry, yeah. The nastiest. He was the nastiest pit bull. Like you can even say good morning to him because he'd bite your head off. Like seriously, I'm not even.
What a sweet man he was.
Not to me, he was sweet.
Man to you, right?
Yes.
But if you didn't know him and you said good morning, sir, good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Man, he'd be like he was worse than Raymond's pit bull. I swear.
Yeah.
But to see him, see you, because that dude was not easy, okay? To see you guys for what you were doing was like a blessing. He was giving you his blessing.
Totally, yeah.
For him to allow you to cast him, and then he showed up for the bus ride to.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was just unbelievable. Something bigger is always happening.
can we take another couple questions, because I think we're, yes.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. I really love all of this. My question is, have you ever had to pass by request, I'm thinking patients, but people that have passed and dead people?
Ha ha ha.
Maybe, someone wants to remember.
Why do I say that, ha ha? You mean you make up something? You're not life casting.
Life, yeah.
Well, there are death masks, but you're not talking about that. Now, Rigoberto just did Julia de Burgos, who's a very important Puerto Rican poet, and she died, I think, probably before Rigoberto was born, okay? So he just made up her face, that's all. You see? That's how he did it. Does that answer your question?
I was literally,
Not a life cast of her. It's not a life cast. It's a made-up figure.
More questions?
Hey, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.